It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You go to emailrevealer.com, you can get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, or you can get that at amazon.com as well. But at emailrevealer.com, you can go there and, let's say you think your spouse is cheating online, you send us their email address, we can trace it back to online dating websites and catch them cheating online. We got a returning guest today. People loved him so much. Former LAPD detective Mike Rothmiller. And as soon as I say the name, people are going to be excited. We did a great show last time on his book, Secrets, Lies, and Deception. And so many things were left unanswered. And I was in touch with Mike, and he agreed to come back on. So we have him back with us today. Mike Rothmiller. So, come on. All right, there we go. Detective Rothmiller, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, great. I almost couldn't get your mic back on. Okay. I'm clicking away. How much can I talk, you know? Okay.
That's the government shutting you down, yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. So, listen, before we get the two books, right? L.A. Secret Police, Inside the LAPD Elite Spy Network, and the new one, Secret, Lies, and Deception. Before we get into that, there were a couple of unanswered questions toward the end of the interview last time. Well, I got one for you right off the bat. You had David K. Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah. How does he involved in this?
Well, David K. People don't know who he is. He's a Reuters reporter. He's won the Pulitzer. He used to be a former LA Times reporter. And when David was at the LA Times, I was working OCID. So we were both there at the same time in L.A. And David became a personal target of Daryl Gates and some of the other intelligence units within LAPD. And when Gates passed away 4 years ago, David wrote a rather long essay that appeared in various publications regarding the true Daryl Gates and his personal experience of Daryl Gates. And so what happened when I was revising L.A. Secret Police as an ebook, I contacted David and I said, I'd like to include your essay you wrote regarding the true Daryl Gates and close the book with it. And so he agreed to it. He says, sure. He wrote a little bit more, and that went into my last book, the revised L.A. Secret Police. So that's the connection between David and I.
I had no idea about that part of the story because I've had David K. Johnson on the show talking about Trump. He's become this. He just wrote a book about Trump. I forget the title, but you see him all the time now. He's on MSNBC almost twice a week, 3 times a week. He's become this expert on Trump's tax returns and Trump's finances. So I'm a big fan of David K. Johnson. So this book is worth it.
And I would advise everybody to, either call up his article, the essay he wrote, or if they downloaded the the revised ebook of LA Secret Police, it's in there as David gave it to me, and it gives amazing insight into Daryl Gates, the tactics that intelligence used in LAPD, and it substantiates everything I said in the book. So it's well worth the read.
Oh, yeah, excellent. Yeah, it would be worth it just to get the book just for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really. I'm a huge fan of David K. Johnson. I'm a huge fan of Mike Rothmiller now, too, as well. And so is most of the listeners. I think every listener we have, I've got an email from every single one of them complimenting that last show, And you know how I love those emails, guys. Okay, Mike Rothmiller. When we left off last time, there were a couple of questions I wanted to get to, but we were getting rushed toward the end. Now, one is the use of madams and brothels and those kind of, they're like usually informants, right? And in LAPD, you had some big cases. The the Heidi Fleiss and that kind of stuff. Did you have any kind of? What do you know about that?
Well, when I worked vice for 18 months before I went into intelligence for 5 years, and there were low-priced prostitutes and very high-end prostitutes that were informants for me and for a lot of other people. And what they were doing is basically keeping the police literally off their back and taking out the competition. What became interesting when I was in intelligence, the largest madam in the San Fernando Valley, she was probably controlling 50 to 80 really high-priced call girls. And what would occur as soon as the local vice guys, the divisional vice guys in the valley, would get close to one of them and look like they were moving in and possibly make an arrest, the gal would vanish. She's just gone. She'd go to where you're at Vegas, or they'd go to Anaheim, or they'd go to Florida, New York, and they would just move, and nobody could quite understand what was going on. And then from a surveillance, it became known that a captain on LAPD who happened to be in charge of vice enforcement was basically spending a lot of time with the madam, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so what he was doing, there's no question, he was tipping off the madam, say, hey, there's a vice report came in on, Cheryl or Cindy or whoever, and you better get her out of here because she's going to be arrested if she doesn't get out of town very quickly. So that's what occurred. And then as it turned out, the chief of police protected this captain. So he said, well, I can't have you in charge of vice any longer because a lot of guys know what you were doing. So he moved him on to a more secure environment where he could just be kept under the thumb of the chief. So the chief could keep his eye on him.
Now, didn't Daryl Gates' brother, wasn't he involved in some kind of scandal with a prostitute?
I believe he was, yeah.
Okay, we don't know any details on that?
Well, just what was in the papers back then, but I haven't read anything about it in a long time.
Okay, I was looking over some of the notes from the last show, too, as well. And now, you were involved in surveillance of Richard Nixon at San Clemente?
No, OCID was.
Okay.
Before I get there, when Nixon was president, he had the Western White House in San Clemente.
Right.
And what would occur is when he was in town, they're staying there, obviously people would come to see him. And a lot of people that were coming in were union bosses, the Teamsters bosses, things like that. And so as a result of that, LAPD intelligence would go down there and set up surveillance on the Western White House, as did the Orange County Sheriff's, as did the Orange County DA's office intelligence, and some other people. I mean, it was like a huge party because all these intelligence people were down there watching Nixon and watching who would come and go. And there were some very interesting individuals that were heads of Teamsters unions, well, the Teamsters and other unions at the time, who were very well tied into major mob guys.
Interesting. You never hear about that side of Nixon, that he was, but I guess it was all political, right? Now, I don't think he was into making money, was he? It was
no. It was
power.
Basically political, yeah, power.
But now this is interesting, too, now you were assigned surveillance of the California Attorney General, Vanderkamp's?
That's right.
Why was that?
Well, what occurred was we were monitoring, myself and my partner, this guy who was basically a lieutenant in the Chicago mob, was in Orange County, California. And he had set up residence down there. So the FBI, we spoke with them, and FBI, their intelligence people, started running a pen register on the guy, and that basically said what phone numbers were calling in and what phone numbers were calling out from this guy's house. And so this one phone call was made from this mob guy's house to Van Camp's cottage, and what he had was a beach cottage, and at the time was called Crystal Cove, and I think it's Crystal Cove State Park now. Little tiny beach cottage from probably 50, 60 years ago, how old it was. So when that came back, we saw the name come up with his phone number, John Van Camp, and oh, that's kind of interesting. We checked it. Hey, it's the Attorney General. Now, we gave that in a intelligence report to our captain, who immediately took it to Gates. And it came back from Gates. He says, listen, this guy's got a house in Laguna Beach. At the time, Laguna Beach, as I say, was a huge gay enclave. And Gates said, since he never told me he had this house, he's probably gay. So find out if he's gay. Not if he's hooked up with this mob guy, find out if he's gay. So we're going, oh, Jesus. So we're ordered to go down there. We went down to Crystal Cove and set up a surveillance, myself and several other guys from OCID, and on the cottage, and nobody was coming and going. We could tell that. So they wanted to stay on it. And we also got permission to hire, if we wanted to rent like a 30 or 40-foot yacht out of Newport Beach to go anchor it off the beach there and watch from the ocean. And I'm going, this is too nuts. So finally, after we were there a day, I'm just going to go walk down to this cottage because I thought it was crazy anyway. And I walked down to it. I looked, and there's cobwebs and spider webs all over the front and back door. So nobody had been there, and who knows how long. And I said, that's it. We're out here. This is over.
And definitely no interior decorators were there, right?
Yeah. And so I just reported back to Gates, said, hey, and there's no connection. We couldn't find anything. But Gates was very upset because he said that there was like a meeting they had once a month, a breakfast meeting once a month, once every other month, with him, Van Camp, the DA of LA County, some other guys. And he said, and Gates came back, he said that, I want to know if he's gay because I don't want to sit next to him at breakfast if he's gay.
Really?
Yeah. So we said, well, don't sit next to him then,
Sit across from him. Yeah. No. What about the same thing happened with Jerry Brown, though? They wanted to find out if Jerry Brown was gay?
Yeah. We had a massive intelligence file on Jerry Brown during his first term as governor. And that was Gates's main thrust, was he wanted desperately to have some very hard evidence proving that Brown was gay. I mean, he wanted photographs, he wanted recordings, audio recordings, anything he could get his hands on. And so what happened, LAPD intelligence at the time, they were putting surveillance. Unfortunately, I didn't have to go out and chase Brown. The other guys are doing it, the political team guys. And at the time, there weren't cell phones. And it was just starting to get to the point where you could have a phone in your car.
Right.
And so Brown had one in his state car when he come into Southern California. So LAPD, intelligence, the electronic guys, developed a device that they could monitor his frequency and record all of his telephone calls that were made from his car when he was in Southern California. And that's what they were doing.
Did they ever dig up any dirt on him?
Well, they dug up some stuff, and I was told that it had to do with some of his senior cabinet members being pretty tight with the Mexican mafia.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
That's interesting. Now, you would think that with this kind of surveillance that they would always find something.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for and what you want to find.
Right,
that's the whole thing. Gates was very particular. He was only interested in one aspect. And if, you came across something else that, there's corruption or whatever, he would love that too. But he was just very adamant about when he thought somebody was gay, he wanted to know, and he wanted to control them. As they did with several, major entertainers and some other major politicians who were gay, but were still in the closet. And there was some hard documentation on that LAPD intelligence obtained. And Gates was just thrilled to death with that. And it was interesting because once those people knew that Gates had this stuff, they became very good friends with Gates. They'd do anything for him.
Right, you mentioned that last time. What about, you see a guy today, right? A guy like Charlie Sheen, who was, they find him, he's naked, covered in blood in a hotel in New York City. The girl's hiding in a bathroom. He's attacking his wife in Colorado with a knife. Another woman, I don't know if she was married to or what, but she gets shot in the butt in his bedroom. A guy like this, so much, cars winding up in ditches and ravines, so much stuff around a guy like this. How does he get away with it?
Well, I have no idea, how he gets away with it, but it's just stuff that is so much in the open as far as the media, because you got to remember back in the late 60s and 70s, there was no internet. There wasn't a lot of this stuff. There wasn't really the scandalous like TV shows that are on, things like that, news shows. So everything was just pretty well kept under wraps if you wanted to be kept under wraps. And as far as Charlie, I don't know. Somebody'd have to ask him.
Okay. Now, you were mentioning, too, that you did a lot of work with the FBI and you had some dirt on Hoover. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, well, yeah. When I was working intelligence, I was also assigned to as the rep to the Department of Justice Organized Crime Strike Force in Southern California, and I dealt a lot with FBI intelligence and other FBI agents. Now, what was interesting, and I've confirmed to some people that have been dealing with them recently, for a better term, is that when it came down to cooperation, like bank robbery, kidnappings, extortion, terrorist threats, they cooperate. When it came down to organized crime, especially when I was doing it, we caught them lying to us all the time. And what happened, it got so blatant, the lying, that once a month we'd have it was the Southern California Intelligence Officers meeting, and what it was, we'd hold it in Orange County, and myself and my partner, we were the reps from LAPD, LA Sheriffs were there, Orange County Sheriffs, Orange County DAs, FBI intelligence, and all these other PDs and law enforcement intelligence agencies. They would send a rep. And the prime concern was organized crime, because there was a ton of it in Orange County, and it's just grown since then, because what the feds would do in the witness protection program, they would dump loads of these guys in Orange County. All these mob guys are in Orange County with different names, right? And so we were kind of keeping tabs on some of them and finding out what's going on. So everybody would come to the meeting and discuss what they've learned over, perhaps the last month, if they want to disclose it about a certain organized crime figure or politician or something. And the FBI, they'd be there scratching notes like crazy. Every time it came around, said, "You guys got anything, Dad?" "Oh, no." They would never say anything. And so after several months, we started asking them questions. "Hey, well, do you guys know of like Whitey Bulger in Boston, or these other mob guys in Lawton, Orange County?" And they go, "Gee, no, we've never heard of them." Of course we knew they were lying. And so after that, we were out on some surveillances in that area, and we'd be on some major mob guy that just flew out from the East Coast to have a meeting. And who do we see them meeting with? These FBI agents, these same two guys, right? So we go to the next meeting, said, "Hey, do you know anything about Izzy Goldberg from New York?" Never heard of him. Where a week before this, we were watching them having lunch, So that's when they would lie all of the time when it came to organized crime or corruption with politicians. They would not divulge anything. And as a result of that, we started having this Intelligence Office Association. We would have our meeting when they were there. We'd say, "Okay, see you guys in a month." We'd leave. They would leave, and we'd all come back in and have another meeting without them there.
Get out of here.
To discuss. No, yeah, we just, they never realized it, but we just said, "These guys are liars. We can't trust the FBI, so we're not going to tell them jack." And we wouldn't. And then they would start calling us, "Hey, do you know anything about this guy or that guy?" We go, "No, never heard of him." So it was payback, and that really hasn't changed that much probably since Hoover was in. And even to the current day with Comey and this current investigation with like Hillary's emails, everybody I know, even some FBI agents I know that are retired now, and others, they're just laughing at them. They're going, "Oh my God, does Comey think that we're actually believing this, or the public's believing his statement about this?" So it's what the FBI does. They will be very helpful and very upfront regarding some things. Other things, they will lie to the day they die about it.
Do you think it's the same motivation as Gates, like a blackmail kind of a thing?
Well, it could be, and it could be too that the FBI notoriously they have a built-in distrust for any other law enforcement agency beyond themselves. They just don't trust anybody, and they think pretty much when it comes to organized crime or all this other stuff, most cops are probably corrupt. Now, sometimes they're right, but it's just a blanket statement what they go by. And other things that they've lied about that are major. Well, one is and we briefly discussed this last time. In my new book, Secret Lies and Deception, I have in there 2 chapters about the former Federale commanding general of Mexico.
Right.
How he was already indicted by a secret federal grand jury as a major cocaine trafficker. He was the El Chapo at the time, before he was appointed commanding general. So the FBI, DEA, State Department, CIA, and got together and removed his warrant, his federal arrest warrant, from the lookout system, so he could travel in and out of the United States as he pleased. And they never released that. Even after, when he was out of office, they knew that he had already amassed probably $1 billion from the documents that I have. He moves that into the United States, most of it. He moves to the United States. He's spending a lot of time in Vegas. He's living in La Jolla. He has a penthouse in West Los Angeles and a place in Canada, and he's flying around his private jet. Well, what he's also doing at that time is putting together a mercenary force to assassinate the new president of Mexico, because he thought if he kills the new president, the corruption investigation that the Mexicans were doing regarding him would end. And that's what he was planning to do. And so the Mexican government found out about this. They sent their head of their CIA to meet with the head FBI agent in the embassy in Mexico City. And that guy basically laid it out, because I've got the documents, said, hey, listen, this guy wants to kill the president of Mexico. He's got the power and the money and the contacts to do it. If we find him in the United States, because they didn't know where he was at the time, or if you guys, meaning the FBI, if you find him in the United States, would you have any objection to us forcibly kidnapping him and bringing him back to Mexico? So the FBI agent says, well, no, we can't condone that. And he says, okay, how about if we send up an assassination team and kill him? Would you have any problems with that? And he says, well, no, we can't do that either. And so when you look at all this, the FBI just, even after the guy's out of office, they protected him, as did the DEA and CIA and the State Department. And once the Mexicans had a warrant for his arrest for all sorts of corruption, Interpol was looking for him, CIA, FBI, and all these people were looking for it. The FBI and the CIA, they couldn't find him. Well, I had been out of law enforcement like 10 years or so. I knew he was in West Los Angeles in plain view, because I knew people that were having lunch with him, and they just couldn't seem to find him. So finally, the Mexicans press it, and the FBI says, okay, we learned that he's going to be flying into Puerto Rico. Well, he flies into Puerto Rico, and the FBI arrests him down there. They bring him to L.A. It takes about a year for an extradition to Mexico, but never during that time did they serve the warrant for the federal indictment on him for narcotics trafficking. They still kept it buried. They didn't want that to become exposed to the public. So the FBI lying, when it serves their purpose politically, they will lie. They will not conduct an honest investigation. And I saw that too with LAPD. When we started sometimes the chief would say, now, this guy, we think he did something. I don't want him proven guilty. I don't want him arrested. But do an investigation that shows that he's innocent.
Really?
So he would dictate, he'd dictate ahead of time the outcome of the investigation. That's what the FBI has done on this, and that's absolutely what the FBI did, currently with the Hillary situation and the emails and all that stuff. Everything they did in that investigation was ass backwards and make no sense except to clear somebody, or not clear them, but to keep them from being prosecuted. They did everything they could.
Yeah, at the very least, she's guilty of lying to Congress, because we have the recordings. We all witnessed it with our own eyes.
Yeah, and before they did the interview with her, some people asked me about it, and I said, well, I'd like to know a couple things. One, even though she theoretically would not have been detained, did they Mirandize her? Probably not, because they'll say, well, she wasn't detained. She could have got up and left. Then, you look at some of the questions that were asked, and they were just useless questions. But then also I told everybody, I said, if she, which this as a PI, if she says one time, I don't recall, she's lying. Because every attorney knows that, every cop knows that if you're testifying, you don't want to answer a question about something, you say, I don't recall. And that was said, 37 times, 40 times, whatever it was. So, and they never came back on the questions. And so the whole thing, it smells from
it was
many levels.
Very short interview, too. I believe it was only like 4 hours or something ridiculous like that. Like when you want to spend a couple of days.
Also, they say, they don't record their interviews. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. This was such a significant and high-profile investigation. As you know, you want to record it because if you lie to the FBI,
right,
just like Martha Stewart did, that's a crime. You go to prison, right? You're prosecuted. That's how you prove it. You don't go, well, I think so-and-so said this or that. No, you have the evidence right there. And for them not to record it was a clear demonstration that, no, that wasn't protocol, not recording interviews, because a lot of them you don't if they're minor or something. But this was a significant interview, and it would have been recorded. And if she said, no, I don't want to record it, they say, fine, we're not going to do the interview then. Let that become public. And have you ever heard of a time, I never did when I was on the strike force, when you just grant immunity to a bunch of people? Every time that was done, we had a grand jury going. And you put them in front of the grand jury. No, I'm taking the fifth. Fine. Then they grant them immunity. Now testify. You don't go in and every possible target grant immunity to. I mean, you just don't do it.
Yeah.
So.
What do you make of the
FBI,
meeting? Yeah. What do you make of the meeting between Clinton and Lynch on the plane, and they're in Phoenix?
Well, personal opinion, that stunk, and I'm not buying it's a coincidence by any means. For many reasons, but one, when as you know, Lynch would have security, Clinton, he has security, Secret Service. You don't just have two private jets kind of pull up into a private hangar facility at an airport, and then this without being set up in advance. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And then what broke it, because I live in Arizona, was a maintenance guy at one of the facilities said, hey, I knew this was basically Lynch came in, and then I saw Bill Clinton come up and walk up. It was never put out in public. If they had nothing to hide, it wouldn't have occurred that way. And it had to be prearranged. And I just don't buy the story that they were talking about golf and grandkids and puppies and butterflies or whatever they're talking about. It's just all nonsense. It's just nonsense. And when you start stacking all the events up, you look at it and you say, No way. No way was this an honest investigation from the beginning. And here's the other thing. When I was on the strike force and also with the DA's office, law enforcement on the police department, as with the FBI, you compile all the information, everything you have on a case. You go to the district attorney or the U.S. attorney and say, here's what we got. How about prosecution for whatever crime it is? And the prosecuting attorney will look at it and say, well, yeah, or no, this needs to have a little more juice in it. It doesn't go the other way. It's not up to the law enforcement to say, we're not going to recommend prosecution. That's up to the DA or the U.S. attorney. Excuse me, I've got a cold, to decide. And so when Lynch said, well, I'm going to go by whatever the FBI recommends. Now, she's indicating then that she had no idea what they were going to recommend, right?
Right.
She's not going to say that, because what if they, excuse me, they came in with nothing or they came with a lot? It's up to her office to decide, not the FBI. And Comey knows that too. So that was ridiculous. And then I think it was like a day after this, Obama was campaigning with her down in somewhere in the South.
Right.
I mean, he knew what was going on from the beginning. And him claiming that he had no contact with the Justice Department, he may not have. How about his staff? How about other people? Because you always have a middleman or two or three to act as insulation, so you can set back and say, well, hey, I didn't talk to that person. Plausible deniability. Every president uses that. And so, I mean, the whole thing just stinks.
I couldn't agree more. The whole thing does totally stink. This is a good time to take a little commercial break here. Okay, we're here with Mike Rothmiller. His first book was L.A. Secret Police, Inside the LAPD Elite Spy Network. The new book that just came out is Secrets, Lies, and Deception. Top secret presidential telephone transcripts, top secret presidential letters, top secret documents, and other amazing pieces of history. And we spent a whole 2 hours going over that book. So if you go to the archives, or even on YouTube, you can find that first show. We went for 2 hours. A lot of great information on that. Especially that story about that Mexican drug lord and $250 million that slipped through Mike's hands. He could have got, but he kind of let it go. Okay, we'll be back with more of Mike Rothmiller right after these messages. The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subhash for over 10 years. This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find a link to Subhash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us. Welcome to our new sponsor. And now a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 30% of all people on online dating websites and personal ads are either married or in a monogamous relationship? 30%. If you suspect that your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend may be cheating online, go to emailrevealer.com and our online infidelity investigation. You give us their email address, and we could trace it back to online personal ads, dating sites, and social networks. We can even expand the investigation and find them cheating on escort service sites or even porn sites if they're registered to porn sites and swinger sites. So check out emailrevealer.com if you suspect your spouse is cheating, and check out our online infidelity investigation. William Ramsey is a producer here at the Opperman Report, and he's just come out with a new book, Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. Now, he just sent me a copy of this book. Oh boy, it's about 2 inches thick, and there's a chapter on just about everybody in this book that you can imagine. The Beatles, and Jack Parsons, everybody's in here. It's incredible. And I definitely recommend this book. There's a bunch of pictures in here, too, of all these people and different chapters and information. Anton LaVey and people I've never heard of, too. There's a whole bunch in here. JFC Fuller. I don't know who he is. But it's great stuff by our producer here, William Ramsey. So check out Children of the Beast, Aleister Crowley's Shadow Over Humanity. You can find it on Amazon.com, or you could find it in the Opperman Report.com bookstore. We have an urgent bulletin. It seems that the group Strawman is still on the loose. It has been confirmed that Strawman are Canadian, okay, and that authorities are asking people to stay indoors, lock your doors and windows until this group can be dealt with. You could find more information about this group of Canadians, at strawmanmusic.com. You can have your ad played here. Okay, we're looking for sponsors. Okay, in fact, we desperately need sponsors right now to take this show to the next level. So you can have your your ad played here, read live, like I'm doing now, so artfully. Or we can even work up a little jingle for you with some music and stuff like that and play it here. You have no idea how inexpensive it would be to have your ad played on the Opperman Report on 7 stations live Friday night, and another 7 stations live on Saturday night, plus replayed every day of the week on different stations, and then archived on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all different kinds of podcasts, Pod This and Podbean, all different kinds of places who archive the show for us. And on those archives, your ad would play indefinitely, forever. You also get a little banner on OppermanReport.com. You get a mention on the air, you get a little interview on the air, and all kinds of fun stuff if you sponsor Opperman Report. We have an opportunity to get this show on a major AM/FM station in California. We've been approved. So if you want to sponsor us into that, so incredibly inexpensive that your ad would be heard by the range covers 5 million people in population where your ad would be broadcast, and all these other stations would be thrown in for free. So really affordable prices to sponsor OppermanReport.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. You can get a copy of that book at emailrevealer.com, or you can get a copy of that book now. It's back up on Amazon.com. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. And this book has been updated a little bit from the previous book that we had that was available to our wonderful listeners. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Mike Rothmiller, author of the book L.A. Secret Police, Inside the LAPD Elite Spy Network, and in there's an epilogue from David K. Johnston. You got to check that out. But also his latest book is Secrets, Lies, and Deception, Top Secret Presidential Telephone Transcripts, Top Secret Presidential Letters, Top Secret Documents, and other amazing pieces of history. Now, Mike, again, in the notes you sent me last time, you mentioned something about that your department had some kind of information that the Dallas police allowed Jack Ruby into the police department there to shoot Oswald?
Yeah. When I was working intelligence, information that they were picking up, LAPD intelligence, some other ones, was that several people within the Dallas Police Department, some high-ranking and some, I guess, for better term, rank and file, they conspired to allow Jack Ruby to come into the headquarters when they were knowing that Oswald was going to be transferred, so that he could try to assassinate him. And that was some information that was picked up, that was put in LAPD intelligence files, and information that was never disproven. If anything, through time, it seemed to be getting a little stronger within the intelligence community that did in fact occur. And so, you start thinking about that, and you say, well, why would they do it? Well, they wanted to shut Oswald up, and for whatever reason, or they were actually very upset, and they said, we just want this guy dead because he killed the president. That was never determined, but what was pretty well believed is that there was a conspiracy among people in the Dallas PD to allow him in, knowing that he was going to shoot Oswald.
You always hear that, that he was friends with the cops, he was buddies with them, and they let him come in to hang around and be part of the scene because he always wanted to be where the action was. But you're saying that they actually have it's in these documents that they knew he was going to shoot Oswald.
Yeah, they pretty well understood that from the intelligence that I read, that they intentionally let him in with that understanding that that's what he was going to do. Now, whether he was coached ahead of time or he was just, say for a better term, mentally unbalanced or what, or he had this desire and they said, well, hey, this will take care of business. He's got the desire. He wants to do it. It's his idea. Let him in. Let him get close to him. Let him do it.
Well, I'll tell you something. If you watch that video where Ruby shoots Oswald, Oswald is being held by the arm by this big, giant cop with a big cowboy hat and a tan suit. Yeah. Right. I forget his name at the moment, but I've talked to people that have interviewed him. And as soon as Oswald gets shot, this guy doesn't flinch. He doesn't duck. He doesn't reach around to see if he was shot too. He's still holding him up. You know what I mean, man? Like, he's holding him up. And if you go back and watch this over and over and just key in on this guy knew that Oswald was getting shot. That was no surprise to him.
Yeah, he very well could have. And then in my new book, which we discussed before, is that I have LBJ's telephone conversations he was having with Hoover and other people, and then within the Oval Office later on regarding the JFK assassination. And for just making a long story short, within hours of Kennedy being shot, when you read his conversation, he was dictating the official outcome of any investigation there forward. That it was Oswald, he was in custody, the Russians were involved, the mob wasn't involved, Cubans were, nobody was involved but this one guy. That's how the official investigation that's what it has to determine. And that's exactly what it determined. But then I also have in there basically one page from the, quote, Warren Commission independent investigation, where at the very end they said, yeah, we think it was a conspiracy, but it wasn't the CIA that killed him, and it wasn't the Russians or the Cubans, but we don't know who did it, but it was a conspiracy. And that was the political out if other information became noticed. But then I also have the document when Johnson, 4 years after the assassination, Johnson's in the Oval Office with Ramsey Clark, who's the Attorney General. And Clark is telling Johnson that he now believes they have 3 pathologists on board out of 4 they've gone to regarding JFK's autopsy photographs. They want them to say a certain thing. Now they have them on board. So you have to ask yourself, I certainly did as former investigator, wait a minute. The Warren Commission completed its report 3 years earlier and said, nothing to look at here. It was Oswald, one guy, one shooter, no nothing. All right? It was 4 years after the assassination. Why is the president and the attorney general worried about these 3 pathologists getting on board to say something about the autopsy photos? It doesn't make sense. unless they're concerned that something's going to come up and, basically blow their story out of the water. Because when I was a cop, I attended a lot of autopsies. When somebody gets shot through the head, a gunshot wound, GSW, it's pretty clear what happens. The autopsy, shot through the head, gunshot wound, boom, end of story. That's it. You don't need to go back and try to get pathologists, to get on board with what you're saying regarding some photographs. It's plain as day. So when you see all of this, and it's their own words, their own documents, you say, wait a minute. They're even saying it is a conspiracy. And then you have Johnson worried about it 4 years later. You say, something really stinks there too, It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I tell you, it's tragic. The whole JFK thing is tragic, and to see it, I've had so many people on about the JFK story, into such minutia, like just when they were moving the body from Parkland to the morgue, and in such detail, autopsy, detailing the autopsies, and the mainstream media and the press, and people like Jeffrey Toobin will just go on there with a straight face and say, "Oh no, it was Oswald. It had to be Oswald. There was no conspiracy. There was nothing." It's just it stinks from head to toe, that case.
Yeah, exactly. And let me give you an example of what just happened this month regarding this Arturo Durazo, this federale chief, this drug trafficker. And I have all this in the book, but anyway, it's taken years of me following Freedom of Information Act and mandatory declassification request and appeals to get documents out of them. When I first did it, the DEA, the Justice Department, and the FBI came back and said, we've never heard of this guy. We don't know who he is. So I had to file an appeal and point out to them where they're wrong and they're lying or they're very incompetent. I said, no, because I was meeting with him, and then I'd meet with these FBI agents or these DEA agents and tell them what's going on, and we'd exchange, and this went on for a couple of years. So don't tell me you don't know who this guy is. Mm-hmm. Well, then the FBI, they finally cough up about 300 or 400 documents regarding his plot to assassinate the Mexican president, right? Before this, though, they didn't know who he was. And just this month, well, I'll back up just a second. DEA always responded to me saying, we searched the world, all our files everywhere. We don't have diddly on him, except for there was one file in L.A. that was destroyed, like 3 years ago, right? So I write a letter to the acting director of DEA, and I get my congressman involved, and I file a mandatory declassification request, again with DEA. And, this month, guess what they found?
Uh-oh.
They found a document on him. And it has to do with it came out of Mexico City, the DEA down there. It went to the Secretary of State, DEA headquarters, saying that Durazo, now that he's the federale commanding general, he's been out recruiting other commanders from the Mexico City PD and other PDs who are known narcotics traffickers. And he was bringing them in to run all of his departments within the federales to keep all of the narcotics trafficking going well. Okay, so this is DEA now, just this month, within 2 weeks, coughing up this document that they said they didn't have all along for the last few years. What's interesting is then they send a letter I had my congressman involved. They send a letter the same day to him stating, well, we talked to Rothmel, blah, 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 we gave him this stuff, and there isn't squat worldwide. They neglected to tell him about this document they gave me out of Mexico City. And so here it is, they wrote the congressman saying one thing. On the same day, they write me basically telling me the same thing. Then they add another paragraph in. Oh, by the way, here's this document we just happened to find in Mexico City. So was that a huge mistake? Could be a human error, or was it intentional that they were lying to my congressman, and yet they coughed up the document to me? But the whole thing is just another demonstration of the federal government at a high level. When they want to keep something quiet, they will lie to you.
Yeah, there's no accountability. Yeah.
No, that whether it's a FOIA, whether it's a mandatory declassification request, whether it's, quite frankly, if you're in court, you testify, they'll just lie. They'll just lie. And none of them are held to account for it.
We've had many former FBI whistleblowers come in here and talk about we had Dr. Frederick Whitehurst and Richard Lambert. We've had them all in here, and the same story over and over again. We only got a little bit of time left. Now, the last time you were on the show, you were talking about how your next book was going to be about Marilyn Monroe and the death of Marilyn Monroe. And you said, you couldn't tell us anything, but you'd tell us the next time you came back, okay? And I know it was going to be after the book, but you came back.
Yeah, that's right.
I can still kind of technically hold you to it.
Well, and I can still technically say no. No, that will be, as a matter of fact, I just spoke to my literary agent earlier this week, and what it's going to have is there'll be a lot of things regarding primarily LAPD and LAPD intelligence. And some of the things that are going to be in there will be some revelations regarding the RFK assassination at the Ambassador Hotel, stuff that has never come out, never been disclosed. There will be stuff about, identifying who in fact killed the Black Dahlia. A lot of people have heard that name from a murder way back when in Los Angeles, but the Black Dahlia, because LAPD intelligence had him, and they're squeezing him, and I have the information on that and some documentation from them. That's never been released. And then also I'm going to finally disclose what happened to Marilyn before, during, and after her death. And how do I know that? Because, one, I had access to all the intelligence documents and the intelligence investigation into, for a better term, the events surrounding her death. I had access to the Kennedys and Marilyn's and Peter Lawford's intelligence files from LAPD, and then I also saw all the surveillance photographs of all of them, and then I also interrogated, when I was still a cop, the guy who was actually an informant of mine, but I interrogated him, who planted the bugs within her house and Peter Lawford's house, and he wiretapped both phones, Marilyn's phone and Lawford's phone. I knew him for a long time. Like I said, he's an informant. I interrogated him extensively on it. He gave me the details. And then a person who was in the house, very well known, I interrogated that person in beginning of 1982. And that person finally broke down and told me what they knew about what occurred in the house that night when she died. That will be in there.
You also read the diary too, right?
Pardon me?
You also read the diary.
Oh yeah. That's going to be in there too. Yeah, LAPD Intelligence had a copy of her diary, and I read that when I was working there. And when I first came across it in the files, I didn't realize what it was, and so I said, "Oh, Marilyn Monroe and the diary." And, it's her diary, and I started reading it, and so basically, what was contained in her diary that vanished way back when, but mysteriously a copy ended up in LAPD intelligence is interesting. I will disclose what was in there, contained in the diary.
Now, you talk about how the guy who planted the bugs was your informant, and I guess you know him well. Now, did he keep copies of the recordings?
He did.
And where are they now?
Well, he was on a lot of people's payroll. He was on LAPD intelligence payroll. He was on the CIA's payroll. He was on, Jimmy Hoffa hired him too, and the FBI. And what he was doing, he did everything, and he would make copies and give it to the other people that were paying him.
Sure.
But the one thing that he did, which I knew, which he admitted to, he said that he knew LAPD, especially at that time, intelligence could destroy him, because we were the guys, the umbrella with the heavy fist in Los Angeles where he was at. FBI, the Teamsters and all that stuff, they were out of state. He didn't have to worry about them too much for the FBI, but he had to worry and please LAPD intelligence, because the guys were on him all the time. And so that's why he said he would give LAPD intelligence 100% of the recordings and the notes he had and everything, but he would just give, say Hoffa, he'd give him maybe 30% and say that's everything. He'd give the CIA maybe 60%, said that's everything. And there's no way of knowing whether that was everything or not, but it was certainly, LAPD had a huge stash of it compared to what other agencies had.
Oh, yeah, man, I tell you, imagine what we could hear on air,
Yeah.
Now, what about her psychiatrist? He was there that day, too, and he's even involved in, cleaning up the bed and all kinds of stuff. Do you have anything on him?
There's a lot of reports about that, who was there, who wasn't. The vast majority of it, since my first book came out, I made a small mention of Marilyn Monroe, the death and her diary in the book. When I say small mention, maybe 2 paragraphs. And ever since then, every person that has written a book on it, on Marilyn's death, Matthew Smith, Jay Margolis, you just named Don Wolf, all of them contacted me and said, tell me what happened, what really happened, because they're basing all their information on what's already been published. And, either on the internet or in other testimony given and other interviews from newspapers. What they've just done is they've accumulated all these statements from people in interviews, and then they tried to piece it together in a coherent fashion, saying, well, this is my pure speculation. This is my theory about what happened. And they've got nothing to back it up. And all of them have asked the same question. I've refused to tell them. I said, no, I'm not going to get into that now. So finally, since I'm out of the corporate world, I'm just focusing on writing my books, basically retired, I can disclose it now, finally. But even, 48 Hours Mystery, CBS, they got a hold of me, 5, 6, 7 years ago on the anniversary of her death. They said, hey, listen, would you come on and finally say what happened so everybody will know? I refused to do it. So it will be out there when the time comes, and everybody will finally know what did occur.
Okay, and you're going to come on this show first, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, we're out of time. And I tell you, Marilyn Monroe is probably the most popular topic we've ever had on this show, so I can guarantee you definitely sell a ton of books, because I know that Margalis did. Do you have any events coming up, any other shows or anything, book signings or anything?
No book signings. The only things that have happened recently have been, obviously, a lot of interviews. Since the book came out, Fox News TV interviewed me, and they did a 4-minute segment on the book about 2 weeks ago. And so a lot of that's been going on. Plus, I've been contacted by, I can't disclose it yet, but by a researcher and associate producer at one of the major ongoing TV investigative shows, okay, about the Durazo thing.
Oh, yeah, great. Great.
Yeah, a major newspaper, their investigative reporting team has also contacted me. They said they're definitely going to get on it probably next month and try to get to the bottom of it.
Oh, yeah, that's a great story.
It is a major story, bigger than Watergate.
No, yeah, that's a great story, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Rothmiller, LA Secret Police, inside the LAPD Elite Spy Network. That has David K. Johnson, did a little part of that. And then Secret Lies and Deception. This is the new book, just came out. Top secret presidential telephone transcripts, top secret presidential letters, top secret documents, and other amazing pieces of history. Mike, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good night, bro. Okay, there you got it. Mike Rothmiller. Everybody loved him the first time. Got a few little new tidbits there. Listen, guys, the member section. If you like what you heard just now, okay, please, you go to OppermanReport.com. There's a ton more stuff on there. OppermanReport.com. We have a special member section with documents, with exclusive shows, 1-hour shows, 2-hour shows, 90-minute shows, all different kinds of content. You can go there, just sign up, become a member. It helps support these shows you hear free on Friday night, the shows you hear free on Saturday night, and the shows you hear repeated during the week, and we replay it on all the different networks and affiliates. So thank you so much for joining the show today. OppermanReport.com. You sign up and become a member. We also take donations. You want to donate and help the effort here? OppermanReport@gmail.com. And there's also a donate button there on awakeradio.us and also at the OppermanReport.com website. Thank you, Mike Rothmiller, LA Secret Police, inside the LAPD Elite Spy Network. and Secret Lies and Deceptions. The new book just came out. So check it out, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. Got to hang this thing up. There we go. Come on.